Don Gelestino. Elevator work is often big and messy and brute, and board planning for it has usually taken months, if not years. But even the best laid plans can go haywire. In all the jobs that your company does, what percentage of them hit some kind of surprising event?
So I would say that 60% of our jobs definitely entail some kind of a surprise or a glitch. Now, out of the 60%, maybe only 20% a customer would be aware of. Everything else we have to handle in-house and make adjustments for. The 20% that do come to owners are usually a big surprise.
So give me a sense of what these big surprises can be, because that's a pretty big number.
Well, that is a big number, and the surprises are usually even bigger because they're very unexpected, even for us. I'm in the business 36 years, and you think every day you've seen everything you could see, but yet another surprise pops up. Examples of those sometimes are shocking, and they need immediate action. So everybody has to get on the same page real quick. And one good example was we were taking out a hydraulic piston in the ground. You know, a little bit of water in the pit, but nothing out of the ordinary for both us and the building. And once we pulled the piston out of the ground, it was plugging up an underground stream. So once the piston came out, there was a geyser about 15 foot in the air, filling the building with water. We had to go to multiple plumbing companies to have pumps installed. And those pumps were ejecting the water basically fast enough just to keep the job status quo so that the whole basement of the building didn't flood, while we all made decisions what we were going to do. And that kind of a job entailed about a $600,000 job that the building had to do. And it was something that the elevator company would never know, the building would never know, the consultant would never know. Nobody knew, but it needed action immediately. So that's one small example of a surprise that happens unannounced.
So this is a little bit of war stories. Give me another war story.
You know what? I get one a day, so we could probably sit here for about 30 years. But I will say we had another one just about 2.5 weeks ago. Elevator modernization, not a big deal, stuff we do every day. And it was over in Brooklyn. And when we went into the shaftway, there's plating that covers the front of the shaftway called fascias. Just metal plates cover the shaft. You know, we started taking them off from the bottom, so the basement was fine. The first floor, when they took a fascia off, they seen a little bit of cracking in the corners of the front of the shaft. Not a big deal. They went up to the second floor, a little more cracking, third, fourth, fifth. By the time they got to the 6th floor of the building, we realized that the front wall of the entire elevator shaft for the entire length and height of the building was disconnected and basically could have came crumbling down at any time, which again, we call up the owners. First thing they say, how could everyone miss this? Well, no one could see it. The consultant didn't see it. We didn't see it. Now that we have exposure to the raw material and bricks of the shaftway, it's there. And the question is, what are we going to do about it, you know? And obviously we had to put our guys on pause, demobilize them, and later on remobilize them, which is not the biggest case scenario, not a big loss of productivity or money. It's just a matter of action, and the action needs to be now. And, you know, that's what we were faced with that. And that was just in the light of this whole coronavirus situation and where a contract is coming and can guys get back on the job? Will they go back on the job? So that was just a recent situation that happened 2 weeks ago.
So let me ask you, when a job is disrupted, either by a geyser or a fascia falling down, What is the impact, A, on the dollar budget and actually on your operation in trying to get the elevator, what you were initially called in for, fixed?
Yes. So this is where the 65% gets real tricky. So 65% of the jobs end up with some kind of an unforeseen situation. 45% of those unforeseen circumstances are basically in our wheelhouse. We have to make up the difference. We're not a change order driven company. You know, some companies thrive on that kind of stuff. We feel like if we missed it, or it's something that we can handle, we handle it, and usually at no cost. The other 20%, things that are very much out of our control, like the front of a shaftway falling off, or a geyser, or tons of other stuff I've seen. We have to have a communication directly with the owner and the consultant. And, you know, obviously, first and foremost, bring awareness to the situation. Sometimes we have suggested remedies. Sometimes things are so far out of the norm, we're not qualified even to take a guess at it, like the geyser, like what qualifies me? What am I going to say? I'm going to say, plug it up. What does that mean? And how do you do it? And how long will it last? You need real professionals, just like the structural integrity of a building. We've seen a lot of structural issues that we found. We're not really qualified. We're qualified in the elevator field. The builder would then have to get the qualified parties or agencies to come in and, you know, assess that stuff. Engineering firms, you know, sometimes water prevention companies. But, you know, we have some people that we've learned and grew with through the business. We can make recommendations, but a lot of the times, if we can't fix it ourselves and we're bringing it to the owner's attention, chances are it's a big deal and it's something we're not qualified to even suggest a remedy.
So for boards who are doing elevator work, I mean, it seems like, I want to say it makes sense, not that anybody would welcome this, that if an elevator job is going to cost $100,000, for instance, it would make sense that you have access to more money in case, and really plan that there could be in case something else comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's only because when you're in a situation or a critical situation, especially in unforeseen, usually you're already at the point where the elevator is shut down and taken out of service. So now you have X amount of stories of people walking or using the elevator next to it, which is doing double duty now. And the clock is ticking. And that's when you don't want to have to start scrambling to increase your line or take money from reserves that were reserved for another capital expenditure. So you really have to have something in reserve just in case. Now, the good news is a lot of times you go through these jobs and they never see, feel, or know anything different. They can always kind of rebudget that reserve. But I think it's very smart for everyone to have something in reserve just in case.
And one final thing, when something goes wrong, is there kind of a blame game that goes on?
You know, in a lot of cases, yes. You know, the most famous line I've ever heard and I hear over and over is, how do we not notice before we started the job? And I get it. We're professional elevator people. Usually, there's a professional elevator consultant. We both come highly recommended. Maybe we both have been in the building for 20 years. The reality is that game ends up having to go away real quick, because 90% of the time when there is a big situation, if it happened when we're on the job, it's something that could not have been seen while we're ordering equipment, engineering a job, because that stuff happens 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance of us going into the building. And we have engineers on site. We're measuring stuff. If it made it past all of that, and it made it past all the consultants' work, and we're actually in the field and we have a critical path situation that we have to address, right away they say, how could nobody see this? And I say, well, the consultant couldn't have seen it because there was walls up or there was a piston in the ground and it was plugged up. We wouldn't know because we've seen the same conditions, but when we remove certain items, that's when you have exposure, and you can't really remove these items while the elevator is still running. So everybody gets it. Nobody wants to hear that. There's no one to blame. Nobody wants to hear that they have to spend extra money, extra time. Even in the case where that piston was in the ground, that just for us to assess what happened, the building lost about a week and a half. Then they had to have a pump company come in and install some type of a pump, which was another week. Then they had to have a company come in and eject some kind of membrane, water seal membrane around the whole pit area. That was another 2 weeks. So what was supposed to be a 4 or 5 week elevator modernization turned into about a 3-month project. And it cost them about $600,000. So here we have a great example. You have a $145,000 4-stop hydraulic elevator modernization that ended up costing $700 and something thousand at the end of the day. Not a penny of it was more to the elevator contractor. I couldn't even tell you the names of the companies or who had to fix this stuff, but it was all done, and it all had to be fast-tracked. So where did that building come up with $700,000 in a pretty much a 1 week notice? I'm not sure, but it had to happen.
So I would say to the advice to co-op and condo boards who are beginning to tackle elevator projects would be what?
I would say that even if you have the best consultant, the best elevator company, the smartest people involved, there are definitely unforeseen that could happen after an elevator is taken out of service. And you have to be prepared. You have to be prepared.
Okay. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.